100 KFRU.
"9:15, it's the morning meeting here on News Talk 1400 KFRU. Simon with you today, and it's a pleasure to welcome to the program the relatively new system president, Tim Wolfe. Nice to meet you. How are you?
Great, Simon. Good to meet you.
It's good to have you on the program. I know I mentioned your dad, and the first thing you said was, uh-oh. But your dad, of course, I mean, a lot of people, I think, when you were appointed, and we got to know you just a little bit, either know you because your history growing up is in Columbia, and you were the quarterback of a state title-winning team, right, at Rockbridge back in the day?
That's correct.
And so have you run into a lot of people since you returned to town that are still in town who played with you on that team or were at school with you during that period?
Quite a few. One of my friends got together a group of about 20 to 25 individuals that I was in high school with, and we got together and reacquainted each other.
And your dad, of course, I think a lot of people came across him. I mean, I was in the communications department as well, and so he has a long history here, and I'm sure lots of people know him through passing through university here at some point or another.
He does. He was a professor here for 30 years
Right.
in the communications department, so I've bumped into quite a few people that either had him as a professor, advisor, or he helped out with some of their dissertations and theses.
Now, if this is the way you want to put it, when did you leave Columbia to pursue your school, your education, your business career? When did you leave?
In 1980. So
Right.
I graduated Rockbridge in 76, went 4 years to the University of Missouri-Columbia, and then in 1980 I left with IBM and I moved to Jeff City.
Did you get back to Columbia? Well, probably in Jeff City you did, but once you'd moved on to out of state, did you get back to Columbia very often?
Yes, at least once or twice a year. Dad's still being here, lots of friends here, so came back frequently.
So then you were familiar, I guess, with a lot of that, because when I go back onto campus, just the physical changes, in the infrastructure and the buildings, and Switzerland Hall, for example, they had communications. I mean, it badly needed it when I was there, but total renovation. And so the physical face of the campus has changed. And I think if somebody had left in 1980 and maybe had not come back at all, they'd be like, is this the same place?
That's absolutely the reaction I had when I did the tour early on in my tenure in this role. I did a tour of the campus, and it was like a different campus.
Yeah.
Though I was coming back to Columbia, I really wasn't walking the campus. I was spending time in and around the city, but really not on campus. So when I got to walk the campus and see the differences in the building, it's really remarkable how pretty the campus is right now.
How did I've read the story, I think, after you were hired, but tell for our listeners who may not be familiar with the story, how did you first become contacted, or how were you first made aware that they might be looking at you, or somebody had mentioned you, or you were a possible candidate for the president's position at MU?
It was really a call out of the dark. About the first week of August of last year, I got a call from the chairman, Warren Ehrman, chairman of the board of curators. He had gotten my name from Dean Gable in the business school. I was on Dean Gable's strategic development board, and she had known that we had sold the business in April. So she had, unbeknownst to me, given my name to Warren. Warren calls first week of August, and it's completely out of the blue, and he said, I'm calling to see if you'd be interested in the role of the 23rd president of the University of Missouri System. And I said, what's your name? And he said, Warren Erdman. And I said, what? And he said, the president. And I said, well, what happened to Brady? Because at the time, it was just completely out of the dark. And I was, for some strange reason, relating it to Chancellor Deaton. So he obviously had caught me off guard and said, why don't we get together later in the week? I've got your email address, and I'll give you some times. And so we scheduled time later in that week, and interim to that conversation, I had the opportunity to Google what was going on and find out what the president was and did and how long it had been open. So I had a much more productive conversation later that week.
Now, the fascinating thing, I'm sure if Renee was here, she would tell you that when her husband this was a few years ago, had been bandied about as a possible name in the running for president, it got out pretty quickly. And they did such a good job of keeping this top secret. I mean, nobody really had any idea, it seemed to me, until the day of the press conference that revealed you were the new president. I mean, that was obviously down to you, but they must have been very careful. Very careful.
They were very careful, and since you brought up Renee, I do want to pass on my best to Renee and her family. That's very, very sad, so best of luck to them.
Yeah.
Back to your question, Simon, it was remarkable how the Board of Curators ran the whole interview process, as well as remarkable as to how they kept it confidential. And one of my requests early on was they have private searches and they have public searches. These public searches basically become a beauty contest in the newspaper and the media. I wasn't interested in some sort of beauty contest in the media, so I had requested early on that if in fact I was the right candidate or a finalist, that it be kept confidential and we could go through the process as quickly as possible.
Especially in a town like this, whereas with respect to all kinds of different topics, much is always made of how well covered this town is, because we've got 2 daily newspapers, which is extremely unusual for a huge city, let alone a city of Columbia's size. We've got a number of media outlets, so we're a very well-covered town. So I think that made it even more impressive that they managed to keep the lid on this.
I was amazed. I thought for sure names would start to slip out. I was absolutely amazed.
Especially when you have kind of a long history here in town too, I think. Mm-hmm. So it's they did a good job of that. All right, let's move all the way up. So how do you get up to speed? You did the Google after they first contacted you. You got on Google and you did some quick Googling. How the heck do you get up to speed with a university system this big, with this many students, record enrollment again this last semester? It seems to me you always would be playing catch up.
It's getting up to speed was interesting. One of the first calls I made was to my dad, since he spent 30 years here, so he could give me a view from the academy side as to what the opportunities and challenges were for the University of Missouri system. Because it was a confidential search, I had to limit who I reached out to make sure that we kept the confidence, as well as early on. I wasn't sure I was the right person for this role, and I wasn't sure that this was the right step for me from a career standpoint. Mm-hmm. So I depended much on conversations with Chairman Erdman. I also had the good fortune to meet Gary Forsey about a week after I'd first met with Warren in person. So Gary and I exchanged a lot of information. In the 3 years that he was in this role, he gave me some very interesting insight, as well as described what his motivation was in accepting the role, as well as what are the challenges that he saw in being the president of the University of Missouri system. So I got a unique insight and had the opportunity to spend a lot of time and ask a lot of questions. So the ramping up portion was through conversations and just a lot of research, and just the rigor that the curators took the candidates through in terms of asking them not only questions as to how they would handle real-life situations, but also questions about what they saw higher education industry evolving to, and based on what they saw the higher education evolving to, how do you react and prepare for that change and continue the momentum that has been achieved by the 4 campuses.
You said you weren't convinced at first that you were the right man for the job, or this was right for your career. Was there one moment where you had an epiphany, or was it sort of a gradual process that suddenly you thought, yeah, maybe I am the right guy for this job?
Well, that's a good question, Simon. The epiphany came after I met with Gary, and that epiphany came because we shared similar backgrounds in that the majority of our background was in the business environment, and he had reached a point in his career that he wanted to do something different, and I had also reached a point in my career that after 30 years of being in technology-related leadership positions, I wasn't sure what I wanted to do next, but what I was sure of was what I didn't want to do. And what I didn't want to do was anything else in technology. Even though I loved it, I just felt that all those boxes in the technology industry, from my perspective, had been checked. I've checked those boxes. I was just ready to try something different. So I was in this wonderful time of relaxation, contemplating teaching, coaching, charitable work, all things that I'd done throughout my career, but never on a more of a full-time basis. So the epiphany came when Gary talked through why he decided to do this and what motivated him, and then also what those accomplishments that he had during his leadership role as the president of the University of Missouri, what those accomplishments meant to him personally as well as others. And that was a very motivational discussion, and it also started to align with what I was thinking about doing next. So the epiphany relative to my personal interest came when I met with Gary. The epiphany relative to my qualifications came a little bit later as we got more and more into the interview process, and the Board of Curators were posing real-life scenarios and asking, as a leader, how would you handle that? Mm-hmm. How would you make decisions? How would you seek information? And going through those scenarios, and they were real-life scenarios, started to make me feel those scenarios weren't that much different than what I'd experienced in 30 years in the business, but more importantly, asking questions, from being from the outside, asking questions that in some case weren't thought of previously, allowed perhaps a wider view of what the alternatives were in which to consider so that you made the right decision on a go-forward basis. So I started to feel that epiphany in terms of my qualifications towards the end of the interview process.
Gary Forsey, I think it's fair to say that when his name was announced as UN president, there was some skepticism because there were some worries that this is a business guy and we're an educational institution. And I think a lot of people, unless they're really in another world, know that the two do have to meet necessarily these days. And I think it's also fair to say that by the end of his tenure, a lot of people who were probably skeptical at first had been won over by him, including, I know, a number of our state legislators. Is that something that you have found is you've not met so much skepticism in that respect because of the fact that your dad is a long-time professor on the campus, and you know, in fact, I think both your parents have a long-time careers in education. So have you found that that's kind of settled some of the disquiet sometimes about the business side of things for you?
I think so, Simon. I think it helps that I grew up in a family of educators. Mm-hmm. I also think it helps that Gary paved the way. So he paved the way in terms of having a business leader make balanced decisions and propel a wonderful institution like the University of Missouri system forward. So Gary accomplished quite a bit when he was here and made some very, very difficult decisions. Out of that, I believe he had respect of the academy, everybody in the University of Missouri system. So coming in, I wasn't, I didn't have the high hurdle that he had to clear as a business leader. So he'd already set that foundation and done some really great work. So what I've learned in spades, just growing up in a family of two educators, growing up in Columbia, Missouri, is the importance, the power, and the potential of educators, specifically faculty, as well as the students. You can never minimize. I mean, right. if you have the good fortune to hang around and have conversations with faculty member that have unbelievable expertise and unbelievable imagination and creativity and innovation, you're not blessed with that when you're in the business world. Right. You just don't have that resource available to you. So what's fun is to talk about what opportunities are out there in our future and allow them to jump in, create, imagine as to what those possibilities are, and they become part of the solution. They bring typically the great ideas to you just by posing the question, which will help you become a better leader as well as get them involved in what that solution would be.
This kind of goes hand in hand, I guess, with the how do you get up to speed question. But you, as system president, you are responsible for a vast number of I mean, we've got a vast number of students, it seems to me, just on the Columbia campus. But you're responsible for everybody, you know, Kansas City, St. Louis, Rolla. Was that a little overwhelming at first? Have you got to grips with just the system?
Well, it is large. It is complex.
Yeah.
I had the good fortune of spending the first 2 months after the announcement traveling to each of the 4 campuses, as well as the health system, as well as multiple locations in the extension system. So I've got the opportunity before getting thrown into the fire, being officially in the role of president in February. I got the opportunity to listen, ask a lot of questions, see face to face what's occurring on these 4 wonderful campuses. So it was a much easier transition for me than somebody that just gets thrown into the fire. Mm-hmm. I have to give credit to interim president Steve Owens, now back in general counsel, because Steve gave me that advice early on once I was identified as the next president. He said, I would highly recommend spending time just traveling, listening, asking questions, learning on these campuses before you get thrown into the fire. And that was probably the best advice I had early on.
When we come back, we'll continue our visit with System President Tim Wolfe, and we'll come right up today and deal with some of the issues that he faces right now. We'll do that after this, as the morning meeting continues on KFRU.
The morning meeting, only on...
Got the morning meeting here on News Talk 1400 KFRU 9:33. Simon with you. Renee not here today. For you just tuning in, her mum sadly passed away earlier on this morning. So again, our sympathies go out to Renee and her family. We're continuing our visit with the president of the System, Tim Wolfe. It's great to have him in studio here. How long have you been on the job now, actually?
Mid-February is when I started.
Mid-February, officially, yeah. And the press conference was what, November?
December 13th.
It's all a blur. I'm sure it's a blur to me. God knows how it looks to you. All right, let's come right up to where we are now. Every year, it seems, we hear reports of record increased enrollment, certainly for the Columbia campuses. Mm-hmm. How many students are we at now?
34,000.
That's incredible. Mm-hmm. That's absolutely incredible. And I have friends come over from Britain, and they stay with us, and then they'll say to me, how many students are on your campus? And I'm always saying, well, I know it's 20-some thousand, and that's huge, and I've been off, we're over 30,000. Is it a good problem to have?
It is. You would like... to continue to be a big magnet in the higher education industry, attracting the best and the brightest in the state to our 4 campuses, as well as those that are out of state or international students. We have 4 unique and distinct campuses, I'll call them brands, that serve special needs in the marketplace. Each one are known for appropriately for their strengths and continue to see record enrollments, record applications. So it's nice that we have a recognizable brand, four recognizable brands that still are considered great value. Mm-hmm. If you're a prospective student or a parent that's looking at campuses for your kids.
You mentioned the word there, value, that I think a lot of parents right now, I mean, we have a 4-year-old and a 1-year-old, and we've already started college savings for them. But you look at what the cost of college is, and I think it was last week there was a report came out that showed how much of America, or what age group, a fairly old age group, is still in debt from their college years. Affordability has to be a big concern of yours, isn't it? I mean, I know you're not directly responsible, but still, that's got to be a concern.
It absolutely is. And everybody has read the statistics, the alarming statistics that student loan debt is now higher than credit card debt.
It's just that's mind-boggling, isn't it? Really,
it really is. When you think back, when I was in school in '76, and I was putting my way through school, and I think my tuition on a semester basis was $300 to $400 a semester. Yeah, which is almost what it costs per credit hour now.
Right.
And unfortunately, that cost has gone up dramatically, where we're seeing students that are leaving campuses on average with $25,000 in student loans. Fortunately, we're below the average in terms of student loans, and one of the things that we have to do is continue to be efficient in terms of our total cost of educating a student. And then try and keep tuition as low as we possibly can, mm-hmm. so that more students can afford to go to school. And that's probably one of the biggest challenges and concerns that we've got. Is what has happened over the years is that there's been a significant shift that takes place between the cost of education being borne in the old days primarily by state and federal funds, is now primarily borne by the student.
Yeah, exactly, and that has to be a big concern. And when it comes to that affordability, and we're looking at the budget all the time, and every year now it seems, this year was no exception, more controversy about funding for education. because this is a land-grant institution, the legislator has to fund the university. How much time have you spent in Jefferson City? And I mean, this is where you kind of have to put it on your politician's hat, isn't it? Because you've got to be very careful about that relationship. Are you encouraged by it? Are you quietly encouraged by it? Are you discouraged by the transactions you've had in Jeff City so far?
Well, I'm encouraged by it, and I have been spending a lot of time in Jefferson City as well as Washington, D.C., having conversations about the value and the importance of higher education. Over time, there's been many examples of how higher education has pulled specific economies out of recession. And the reason being is the investment in education leads to innovation, new business startups, improved productivity that attracts more jobs, more resources, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So there's lots of examples of investment in higher education, not only helps students be more competitive in the marketplace, but also helps issues of the economy. I have a firm belief that the University of Missouri system, which is uniquely positioned in the state of Missouri because it is the land-grant research institution that is the largest with 74,000 students. What also is unique about the University of Missouri system as compared to other colleges in the state of Missouri is the amount of research that we do on our campuses represents about 94% of the research across the state of Missouri in public institutions. So we're doing a lot of research, and that research is not a break-even proposition. We have to subsidize that, but the research allows undergrad students to do some really creative activities along with their research leaders, as well as it helps the faculty members continue to expand their knowledge base. That helps not only in the classroom, but also in their global recognition as a great researcher. So research is very, very important, and we believe out of research, and we've got example after example, out of research comes great ideas that spawn new companies, that create new jobs, that allows for students to have more job opportunities in the state of Missouri versus having to go elsewhere.
Right, and that's the key, I think, isn't it? To say, I mean, I think I remember Gary Forsey being on the program with us and saying one of his main tasks was to convince, for example, outstate legislators or legislators from far corners of the state that, the university or the main campus is in Columbia, but still, this is what having an important educational institution can do for the whole state in terms of economy, education, where we go, it's good for the state. Bottom line, right?
That is true, and we might be the only entity in the state of Missouri that has a physical location in all 114 counties. So each one of our extension offices is located in a county in the state of Missouri. Mm-hmm. In our extension offices, and we're reaching out to rural Missouri through our extension offices, we deliver wonderful services like 4-H as part of the University of Missouri system. A lot of people don't know that. The agricultural experimental stations as part of the University of Missouri system. A lot of people don't know that. So those farmers that are out in rural Missouri that are looking for advice relative to what pesticide, what crop to plant, whatever, the extension provides the best, latest, and greatest research that's occurring relative to biosciences, and they can get that out to the farmers. And also, the extension office provides that conduit of information. If there's a challenge in rural Missouri with one of the farmers, they can talk to the extension services, and they feed that back to the research facilities, and maybe they have a problem or a solution to that problem, or maybe they have to work on some additional research. So the extension services also gives a unique opportunity to help Missourians across the state, and they touch 1 million annually.
It's the morning meeting here on KFRU. UM System President Tim Wolfe is with us until the top of the hour. You gave a presentation to the curators the other day. You basically outlined 6 things that you think are very important. Can you talk a little bit about those priorities for you, if you would?
Sure will, Simon. So what we did was we wanted to make sure that our mission statement is still valid. And when I say we, that's the chancellors from the 4 campuses as well as the system vice president, general officers. So the first step was we wanted to make sure that we still increase the leadership in our 4 pillars, which is teaching, research, economic development, and service. So that mission statement does not change. Mm-hmm. How we accomplish that mission statement is really what we announced last week. So through my first 4 months after the announcement of my acceptance of this role, those 4 months were spent observing a lot of things across the system. And I replayed my observations to the chancellors and the general officers that says, here's what I see, here's what I hear. Based on what I see, what I hear, here's some opportunities for our consideration. So I put out a straw man as to here are the 6 priorities that we should work on in making sure that we accomplish our mission statement. And we iterated back and forth on are these the right 6? Are they worded correctly? And after this process, we concluded that, yes, these are the 6 things that if we make significant progress on these 6 things, we will be stronger and we'll continue to the momentum that we've achieved historically. And the 6 things we're going to be doing more focused strategic planning that is more definitive in terms of what we're going to look like and be in 5 to 10 years. Mm-hmm. We're also going to focus on a people initiative in a more unique way in terms of investing in our people, not only giving them competitive salaries and benefits, but also investing in them so that they can be successful in the important role that they perform. We're going to improve the innovative instruction with student success being first. So we're going to be doing more e-learning and taking advantage of more technology offerings that are out there that will give this wonderful education. It'll make it more accessible to students that perhaps have to work during the day and have to do this education at night or on a virtual location. In addition to that, we're going to increase the amount of research and economic development that we're doing by taking more innovation to market much faster. And operational efficiency, we've seen some significant savings in consolidating the e-procurement function as one. There's other opportunities across the system that if we can consolidate those, and it doesn't necessarily have to be in Columbia, it can be consolidated at one of the 4 campuses, then we will see more efficiencies that will free up more dollars for the critical 4 pillars of teaching, research, economic development, service.
Something else I know that you've said is, a lot of times there's much hand-wringing about the lack of state funds or declining funding, and you said, hey, we can't really worry about that. I think your quote was, it's water under the bridge. We just got to keep looking forward because that's a fact. We just have to deal with it, right? So you're saying, let's look forward because, these are the facts. There's no point moaning about it.
Yeah, I haven't figured out in my life how I can change history, so I don't wish to.
Let us know if you figure that out. Is that what you were working on at IBM?
So since you can't change what's been in the past, what everybody has control on is what happens today, and you can control your emotions, you can control how you spend your time, and I just personally choose to spend my time focusing on the future and looking at everything with a glass is half full versus half empty mentality. That's just my personality.
You'd be terrible on a talk radio show because we're all about the glass half empty. So
well, I'm sorry to change the direction,
outlook, the positivity.
But maybe Simon, with some counseling, you too can become more positive.
You're not the first person to recommend counseling for me, I'll tell you that. We're back with System President Tim Wolfe after this on KFRU.
The morning meeting only on...
It's coming up on 9:50. It's the morning meeting here on News Talk 1400 KFRU. Simon Rose with you, and we'll continue our visit for a few more minutes with the System President, Tim Wolfe. It's good to have him here in the studio. Good to meet him in terms of this particular program. The whole SEC thing, of course, a lot of people thought about this from the athletic standpoint, and that was Brady Deaton who was dealing with that. But when it comes to the SEC, I think what got put on the back burner a little bit is this now means we are an SEC school in terms of academics and everything else, right?
Absolutely.
So did that throw any new challenges your way, right, as you're trying to get up to speed on a brand new job and suddenly you're dealing with all of this, a whole conference change?
Well, yeah, it really is Chancellor Deaton and Athletic Director Mike Alden's responsibility in terms of making the transition to the SEC. I do have to compliment both Chancellor Deaton and Mike for just the spectacular process that they went through and the resulting decision. I think it was very well balanced, and I think it's going to be serve us very, very well for many months and years to come. One of the things, Simon, as you appropriately described, is everybody focuses on this as being a football decision, and
Yeah.
it was much more than just a football decision. The SEC has wonderful schools. They have the same number of AAU schools as the Big 12. They're seeing record enrollments across their schools, and when you think about the success of the SEC, obviously they've won like 5 or 6 football championships in a row. Obviously, Kentucky just won the basketball championship. So we're walking into a wonderful athletic conference, but also we're walking into a conference that very much respects the University of Missouri. And I will tell you, in talking with Commissioner Mike Slive, who was kind enough to call me the day I was announced, which I thought was unique that a commissioner of the SEC would call me out of the blue just to congratulate me on the role. But in talking with Mike Slive, they have in their conference some fundamentals that are unique to the SEC in terms of everybody's considered equal, and they want to help new institutions like the University of Missouri transition to this conference as seamlessly as possible. So they invest quite a bit in helping us move into the conference, and they've been very, very welcoming. And that's, again, not just athletically, but academically as well. So what I'm going to see, what I could envision is that we'll obviously continue to see the success on the field with the great teams that we represent, but I can also see that our academics will improve as well as we mature in the SEC.
Slip your headphones on there, Assistant President Wolfe, and we'll grab a couple of phone calls here in the few minutes we've got left. Hi, you're on KFRU.
Yes, good morning, Mr. President, Mr. Rose.
Hello.
Let me ask a question I've asked of President Floyd and then President Forsey after they'd been here a time. What has surprised you most in coming back to your old hometown and now president of the system? What's caught you maybe off guard, or what surprised you most?
What surprised me most was when I got to tour the campus and see the differences in the buildings. It's just dramatic. It is a gorgeous, gorgeous campus. So that was probably the most surprising situation I've been in so far. Your dad probably looks at Switzel Hall now and go, how come they couldn't have done this when I was there, right? Because that place was falling apart when I was there in the late 80s, early 90s. Well, I think they were just waiting for him to leave so that they could fix it up once he was gone. I said the same thing as my whole time was in Middlebush, which was not far away. I'd have to say it's just a dump, and I don't know what it looks like. They haven't taken me a tour through there, but back then it was just it was old, aged. From an infrastructure, from a classroom standpoint, it was certainly dated. That being said, the faculty wasn't dated. The conversation that was occurring in those classrooms was very vibrant, and was very instrumental in my success. So. Let's grab another phone call. Hi, you're on KFRU. Hello?
Hello, is that me?
Yes, it's you.
Hey, I have a question for Tim. Where did he live in 1970 in Columbia?
Well, you're getting the questions today.
In 1970, I was at 904 Maplewood, right across from the park by Russell Boulevard School.
Why, do you think you were a neighbor? Is that why the question came?
Well, actually, I used to take his sisters with my cousins to ride horses.
That's a long time ago. Thanks for the call. So you lived, actually, that park is still there.
It is.
Very nice park.
Yeah, it's beautiful.
Yeah. Hi, you're on KFRU.
Well, my question might not pertain quite to the president, but I figure I'd start at the top and see where I get from there.
Okay.
In working as a delivery driver and having to make deliveries on campus, the pedestrian-only campuses kind of create a hindrance to that. And they say no vehicles, but it almost seems like there needs to be an asterisk on that sign where it should say no vehicles with the exception of city buses, university vehicles, and any student that will take the shot at coming down that way. Is there any way to actually open that up to delivery vehicles or completely close it off to where no one gets through those areas?
I don't know if that falls into your purview, does it? But have you Has that been one? I mean, that's all the stuff you have to deal with, though. Ultimately,
Oh
right? It's all on you,
no. I don't have to
Down
deal with
there?
that, Simon.
But you got people to deal with.
That's the tough jobs for Chancellor Deaton, and
Aha.
he has to deal with all those really tough
With the
jobs.
local campus,
Yes,
right?
I unfortunately, even if I gave an opinion, it wouldn't be a qualified opinion. So I should just give that to the people that are most knowledgeable.
The pedestrian campus, though, I think has been a part of campus for quite a while, hasn't it? I mean, it was certainly when I was there were certain roads that were closed off during school hours. So.
It was, and it was very confusing because I remember walking by the arts and science. Sometime that road would be open, sometime it'd be closed. It was almost like it was almost like it should have been permanently open or permanently closed because it'd catch you off guard on times.
We're just about out of time. We've talked about your 6 priorities, but what's next for you? I mean, what's the thing you're grappling with the most, or are you juggling a number of things that are high on your priority list? Is there a next big step for you or a big project?
Yeah, Simon, the one that's most immediate is between now and June, decisions have to be made in terms of what the budget's going to be for higher education, and there's serious implications of what that budget would mean in terms of programs, people, maintenance and repair that needs to be done. So what we're working on short term is trying to, again, educate everybody in terms of the value of higher education and hopefully attract as much resources as possible to continue to fund our mission.
We'll hope you'll come back soon and update us on how all that's going, if you would.
I will, Simon.
Nice to meet you. Thanks for coming. That's System President Tim Wolfe, and we do appreciate his time joining us here on the morning meeting. Coming up next, a full update of world news from ABC here on News Talk 1400 KFRU Columbia.
The morning meeting on News Talk 1400 KFRU.